It is a journey through the Bible with Mukhwana Isaac. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Yesterday, we looked at the poor of Yahweh, the poorest servants of Yahweh, and of course, we concluded with uh, with the poorest servant of Yahweh. Remember, by the time that the Messiah had come, there were people in Israel who were truly poor in spirit. We mentioned Joseph, Zachariah, and Elizabeth, Simeon and Anna, and from amongst them, God chose the most lowly in her own eyes to be the mother of his son, that is Mary. And we realize that this poor of Yahweh, the servants of Yahweh, the prophets talked about them. Zephaniah described them. Their spirit, the spirit of these holy ones, the chosen and faithful among the remnant of Israel. And we saw how they led their lives. Today, we take another step, we take a step further, and we look at the wisdom literatures, the wisdom literature of the Jews. The making of the Anawim was a divine work, for in all sanctification, it is God who first lifts up a person to himself. The acceptance of God's love is man's part in his sanctification. But God also uses human ways of educating his people. One of these ways for the Jews was the wisdom literature, the writings of the sages, the wise men of Israel. Many nations around Israel had their wise men who would instruct, often by means of proverbs, in order to educate citizens to behave themselves properly in life, thinking rightly and acting honorably. The Israelitic wisdom literature, however, although it sometimes borrowed from pagan wisdom, was quite different. The Israelites left themselves to the members of God's chosen people, and they knew they had a greater knowledge and understanding of God, of true wisdom, than their pagan neighbors. And this was shown in their writings, especially after the exile. The Jews, the Jewish wisdom, the wisdom writers had an important place in the growth of religious thought among their people. Although many of the sayings of the sages do not seem to have any special religious thought in them, yet behind the intention of the sages to help the people to live practically in the world was their faith in God, the all-wise and all-powerful, who shows his wisdom in creation and in the history of the people of God. The sages aimed at making their disciples preserve preserve holiness and persevere in it. They stressed the fear of God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom and the crown of wisdom. We see this in Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, 9, 10. Wisdom, piety, and morality meant almost the same thing. Knowledge, which ignores morality, is foolishness. The sages demanded obedience towards parents, respect for the holiness of marriage, honesty, temperance, charity towards the poor, widows, and orphans. They gave advice on ways of acting in worldly affairs, warned against laziness, advised on how to bring up children and how inferiors are to be treated, how to act towards superiors and towards the feminine sex. All wisdom, including worldly affairs, came according to the sage from God. The wise men did not aim at helping a few to become great saints. They wanted to help as many as possible to live virtuous lives in their communities. And so, they did not speak much of the spiritual peace which actually a pious life brings, but rather of the earthly blessings to be got from following their instructions. They believed that sorrows of life were a punishment for sin, and they expected rewards or punishments to be given in this life, for their understanding of life after death was very poor. But the writers of the books of Job and Ecclesiastes tried to give a better explanation. Suffering for them was not just a punishment for sin, for they saw good people suffering innocently, especially the book of Job. And that is, for it differs from the deuterocanonical view about suffering and the way of life. The writer of Ecclesiastes says that happiness in this world is not enough. In this way, he prepared men's minds to think about the emptiness of the world in itself and the possibility of the true happiness in a future world. The wisdom books are Proverbs, Job, Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiasticus, Wisdom, and some of the Psalms. So every time these books are read, especially the book of Job, Ecclesiastes, it leaves people with so many questions. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Job suffered with a lot of sorrows, and he was not a sinner. Yes, it leaves us with many questions. These people did not only intend to write about religious, spiritual facts, spiritual matters, but for people to deal rightly, to lead rightly with others, and how they should treat themselves while here on earth. I have been Mukhwana Isaac with the journey through the Bible. Tomorrow we shall look at the Psalms, prayer of God's people of all times. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Be blessed, and we'll link up tomorrow.